Most people think their thoughts are the problem. They're not. The real problem happens before you even notice the thought. There's a moment, so fast you miss it, where your mind quietly agrees, and everything after that feels inevitable. In this video, I'll show you that moment, and why noticing it changes how much control your thoughts actually have. You will learn a skill so powerful that it alone will improve every aspect of your life. A thought shows up, and before you even notice it, you've already accepted it as true. That's why freedom feels so hard to reach. People believe their thoughts are attacking them, but most of the time, the mind isn't being violent. It's being persuasive, quietly, automatically, without permission. And because this happens so fast, it feels like there's no choice. But there is. The Stoics noticed this long before psychology existed, and one of them made it the center of everything he taught. His name was Chrysippus. Chrysippus of Soli was born around 280 BCE in the city of Soli, on the southern coast of what is now modern-day Turkey. He didn't come from power. He didn't come from privilege. He arrived in Athens with almost nothing, and ended up becoming the mind that shaped Stoicism itself. Ancient writers said something remarkable about him. Without Chrysippus, there would be no Stoicism. Not because he was charismatic, not because he was poetic, but because he was precise. Chrysippus wasn't obsessed with life events. He wasn't focused on fate, gods, or external chaos. He wanted to understand how the mind participates in its own suffering, why pain doesn't begin at impact, why emotion doesn't appear randomly, why the same situation can feel unbearable one day and irrelevant the next. While others blamed emotion, Chrysippus looked upstream, to the moment before emotion, to the instant where the mind quietly decides, this means something. Most people never notice that moment. Chrysippus built his entire philosophy around it, and he gave it a name. That name explains why emotions feel automatic, and why they're not. Chrysippus of Soli believed suffering doesn't start where people think it does. It doesn't begin with the event. It doesn't begin with the emotion. And it doesn't begin with pain. It begins with a sequence, so subtle that most people never notice it running. First, something happens. A comment, a delay, a loss, a thought. This creates an impression, a raw appearance in the mind. That part is automatic. Everyone has impressions. Chrysippus was clear about that. But then comes the dangerous step. The mind agrees with the impression. Not out loud, not consciously, just a quiet inner yes. And once that agreement happens, emotion follows: anger, fear, anxiety, shame. By the time the feeling arrives, it feels inevitable, as if there was never a choice. But Chrysippus saw the order clearly: event, impression, agreement, emotion. Most people try to control the last part. Chrysippus focused on the one almost no one sees, because if you miss that step, you'll spend your life fighting feelings that already won, and that hidden agreement. That's the skill this entire episode is about. The Stoics had a precise word for that moment of agreement. Once you understand it, freedom stops feeling mysterious. Chrysippus of Soli used a very specific word for that moment of agreement. He called it assent. Assent is not the thought. A thought appears automatically. You don't choose it. You're not responsible for that. Assent is what happens next. It's the moment your mind says, yes, that's true, this means something. I should react. That agreement is usually silent, instant. So fast it feels invisible. A thought shows up, this is bad. And before you question it, before you examine it, before you even notice it, you've already agreed. That agreement is assent. This is why emotions feel uncontrollable. By the time anger arrives, by the time anxiety hits the body, by the time fear tightens the chest, the decision already happened. Upstream. Chrysippus wasn't saying thoughts are dangerous. He wasn't saying emotions are weakness. He was saying this: a thought has no power until you agree with it. Most people never learn this. They try to fight emotions. They try to silence thoughts. They try to control outcomes. Chrysippus taught something quieter: delay agreement. Because the moment you don't assent automatically, the chain breaks. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If assent happens so fast it feels automatic, is it really under your control? This is where most people push back. They say, I didn't choose to feel that. It just happened. I couldn't stop it. Chrysippus agreed with part of that. You don't choose the body's reaction. You don't choose the adrenaline. You don't choose the tightening chest or racing thoughts. But those reactions don't appear first. They arrive after something else, after the mind accepts an interpretation. When assent happens, the body responds as if the judgment were a fact. If the mind agrees, this is dangerous, the body prepares for danger. If the mind agrees, this is unfair, the body prepares for conflict. Emotion isn't chaos. Emotion is obedient. It follows what the mind has already approved. That's why emotions feel automatic, because the approval happens so quickly, you never noticed it. People don't feel trapped because emotions are too strong. They feel trapped because the agreement is invisible. Once you see this, something shifts. You stop blaming emotions. You stop fighting your own body. You realize the real leverage point was never the feeling. It was the moment before it. And that leads to the only question that matters. If the real leverage point comes before emotion, can you actually pause there? The pause Chrysippus talked about isn't dramatic. It's not meditation. It's not willpower. It's not forcing calm. It's almost nothing. A fraction of a second between a thought appearing and your mind agreeing with it. Most people think freedom requires strength. Chrysippus said it requires delay. A thought appears, this is bad. This shouldn't be happening. I can't handle this. Freedom is not arguing with the thought. Freedom is saying, wait, not to the world, not to the situation, to the agreement. That pause doesn't remove the thought. It doesn't suppress emotion. It simply keeps the chain from locking. And when the chain doesn't lock, emotion loses its authority. You still feel, but you're no longer dragged. This is why Stoics didn't chase emotional numbness. They trained judgment, because the moment you stop agreeing automatically, you stop being owned internally. But here's the part most people misunderstand. This pause doesn't make you calm instantly. It changes something deeper. Most people think freedom should feel obvious, calm, light, relief. Chrysippus warned against that expectation, because freedom doesn't arrive as a feeling. It arrives as capacity. The first time you pause before agreeing with a thought, you won't feel enlightened. You'll feel awkward, uncertain, almost disappointed, because the mind is used to speed. It's used to immediate agreement. Learning not to assent automatically is like learning balance. At first you wobble, you catch yourself after the emotion, then a little earlier, then earlier still. That's progress. Freedom isn't the absence of reaction. It's the ability to choose when reaction happens. And like any skill, it strengthens with repetition. It weakens when neglected. It doesn't announce itself loudly. Most people give up here. They say, it didn't work, I still felt angry. Chrysippus would answer, of course you did. The goal was never to eliminate feeling. The goal was to stop being carried away by it. And when that skill starts to take root, life begins to look different. What actually changes when you stop agreeing blindly? Not in theory, in daily life. When you stop assenting automatically, nothing external changes. People still disappoint you. Plans still fall apart. Life still applies pressure. What changes is your internal posture. Thoughts still appear, but now they arrive like suggestions, not commands. A thought says, this is a disaster. And instead of agreeing, you notice it. You let it pass. Emotion still shows up, but it no longer takes the wheel. You respond slower, cleaner, with less regret. This is what Chrysippus meant by freedom. Not control over events, not immunity to pain, but sovereignty over judgment. Most people live as if every thought deserves belief. This skill teaches something radical. You don't owe your thoughts obedience, and when that realization settles in, it reframes what freedom actually is. If freedom isn't control over life, then what is it? Chrysippus answered that directly. Chrysippus never defined freedom the way people expect. Not as independence, not as control, not as the absence of difficulty. For him, freedom was simple. Not being compelled internally. A free person isn't someone who avoids hardship. It's someone who doesn't surrender judgment when hardship appears. Events still happen, loss still comes, pain still visits, but the mind no longer hands over authority automatically. This is why Chrysippus believed freedom begins before emotion, before reaction, before suffering hardens into identity. You are free the moment you can say, "A thought appeared, but I haven't agreed yet." That moment might be small, barely noticeable, but it's enough, because freedom doesn't require force. It requires not being dragged. And that brings everything full circle if freedom begins before thought. What does that mean for how you live tomorrow? Most people spend their lives trying to control what happens to them. Chrysippus showed something more unsettling. You don't lose freedom when life becomes difficult. You lose it when you stop noticing agreement. The mind doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be questioned. Every thought that appears asks for permission. Most people grant it automatically. Freedom begins the moment you hesitate, not to fight the thought, not to replace it, but to see it clearly before you agree. That small pause is not dramatic, but repeated over time. It changes everything, because a life shaped by judgment is very different from a life shaped by reaction. Long pause. But here's the part most people miss. Assent explains how the mind gives up control. It doesn't explain why we keep doing it, why we agree even when it hurts, why we return to the same patterns, why awareness alone doesn't always stop the cycle. That's what the next episode is about. In the next Stoic Masters, we explore the force that pulls the mind back into agreement. Even when you know better, if this episode opened your eyes, don't miss the next one. It explains why insight isn't enough and what actually locks freedom in place.